Everybody for attending my lunch discussion. The topic is an independent adult on the autism spectrum. And I guess the goal for this discussion is just hopefully it'll be a way to inspire individuals on the autism spectrum to aspire to do great things like, get a high school diploma, maybe get a college degree, get a job, purchase a car, purchase a home, and live independently. So my education background, I graduated from high school in 1993 with a 3.49 GPA, and I graduated from Berry College in 1997 with a Bachelor of Arts in Communication. My career background is in the television industry. I've worked at small market TV stations in Georgia. I've worked on the production side and the editorial side. But the majority of my career has been with CNN in Atlanta. My position is an electronic graphics operator, and I've had that position since August of 2002, and I still have that position as currently. So some of my personal highlights, I think for me, I started working at the age of 14. I think that was an important kind of foundation to get a work ethic established at an early age, and also learned the value of responsibility. I'm a college graduate and a high school graduate, and I've lived independently since I've graduated from college. I purchased a condominium in downtown Atlanta on January 13, 2003, and I still live in my condominium. I met Scott Kramer at the Autism Conference and Expo of Georgia in 2018. And he told me about his organization, GCA, Greater Chattanooga Aspies, and he told me about his symposium that he was going to have in July of 2018. And I attended the Southeast Adult Autism Symposium July 2018. And going to that symposium was such a life-changing and enlightening event for me. I wasn't able to meet Scott, but I left my contact information with his wife, April Jagger. And after the conference, we connected, and I expressed my interest in opening a satellite support group here in Atlanta, in the metro Atlanta area. So I drove up to Chattanooga later that summer to meet with Scott. And he wanted me to meet with Dave Buck, who is the executive director of the Chattanooga Autism Center. And I also met with Nathan Zimmerman, who was a program coordinator with GCA. And then I joined GCA as a program coordinator in August 2018. And with Nathan Zimmerman's assistance and help, I started monthly GCA Metro Atlanta in-town social support group meetings in January 2019. And I can report that these meetings are still going on. And in fact, GCA has been having monthly virtual meetings due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And I've got a support group meeting tonight at 6:30. Some of the personal struggles I've still have as an adult on the autism spectrum is interpreting nonverbal body language cues. I have a hard time reading people's true intentions. If people have an agenda, I have a really hard time picking up on that. Making friends and social aspects of life have been a real hardship and struggle, and it still is for me. And having romantic relationships with females is still an ongoing struggle. Some of the personal takeaways that from my experience is fear is a great motivator, at least for me. I remember in 8th grade, my mom told me in 8th grade that you need to get your grades improved, because starting in 9th grade, when you have your high school transcript, that's part of the steps to get into college. So you need to make sure you get your grades up. And I still use fear of failure as a motivator. Engaging with other individuals is something that my managers at work have encouraged me to do. be more approachable at work, because I guess you'll find when you're in the workforce, it's really important to be able to be approachable and engage with the other individuals, and be get exposed to other people within your organization. And I remember one of my managers says it's important to play in the sandbox with the kiddies, because what I would do is I would go to work and just do my job, and then go home and not kind of interact with my coworkers. But for me, I think the biggest takeaway, where I've had the biggest growth as an autistic individual, is doing things outside my comfort zone. I think it's so important for people on the autism spectrum to do things outside their comfort zone, because they will have new experiences, and they will be able to grow as a person. So I guess that's all I have. So does anybody have any questions for me? I really regarding my background story.
No. I guess you kind of flew through, you were talking about some of the limitations you were having, like with non-verbal body language cues.
Uh-huh.
I guess, can you give an example of like how in your life you've learned to like overcome or compensate for these limitations?
I think I've been able to like kind of mask my limitations. I think I would try to just, try to just cope with it. I remember going to a diner with my mom, and my mom said that waitress was hitting on you, and I couldn't pick up on it. So I just think things like nonverbal body language cues still go over my head. I just have a hard time picking up on what nonverbal body language cues are being, what information is being sent my way, and how to decipher that. I just think and then just challenging myself to, I've been doing some research of how to improve your body language. I know there was like a book my therapist told me, it's called How to Read a Person Like a Book. Go ahead, Maya.
So, could you tell us about some of your struggles in dating women? What does that look like for you?
Well, I think it's, I think the big issue is with me has been communication. I think with me, I've only started dating in my 40s. I think it's been, I guess I've not had the confidence to get out there. And I think I've been trying to figure out like what, we couldn't really get a handle. My mom and I couldn't get a handle on what exactly is, what it is that I have that's causing these struggles. Because I think I was diagnosed, at like 17 in college with OCD. And then my mom saw a special on Today's Show on Asperger's, and then the light bulb went off. She said, "Jamie, you've got to be, you probably have Asperger's, or what is now autism spectrum disorder." But I think with dating, I think it's communication. I think I've only had a couple of serious relationships. I think they both ended pretty bad. I think from my perspective, it's just, maybe I didn't, I think it was like a two-way street. I think I probably could have been more open to, I think I pretty much opened up everything to but I think she was having a hard time with, I didn't know where I didn't know where I was in the relationship. And I remember being early on, I had a chat with her, like, please let me know if there's any issues you have, so we can work on whatever is on your mind. I hope that answers your question.
Yes. There's a question in the chat box. Do the women you've met know what autism is?
They do, and I think I did share that I was on the autism spectrum, and they were quite surprised that I was on the autism spectrum. I don't think they would have thought they would be, because I guess that was not even on their radar. I guess they didn't really pick up that I was on the spectrum, because I think I think because the symptoms I have are, I can speak. I mean, I might appear normal, but I mean, I still have struggles like people on the spectrum do. But yes, they know what autism is. I just don't know if maybe they know a lot of information. I don't know how much information they knew about it, but they were surprised. So.
I have a question.
Okay.
Were there any organizations or support groups that helped you with your independence, like after college?
I guess after college, I mean, I think the transition from high school to college wasn't that, I mean, I didn't find it that difficult. I mean, I didn't have any support groups. I just basically just, went right through the fire, just went right through it. So I didn't have any support groups to help me with transitioning to college. I mean, I think I just did it. I just did it and just, sank or swum. But I didn't find the transition to college was difficult. I think just the social aspect, because all my struggles as an autistic individual all come around the social aspects of life. So, I mean, when I was in college, I just worked, and I did my academics, and I pretty much, that's it. I didn't have any kind of social life or any kind of, I didn't do a lot of extracurricular activities. It was work or school. But I think looking back, I think once you get into the workforce, it's almost important, if not more important, to be able to relate to people in the workforce. Because I think I was brought up by having a big work ethic, and my manager told me about PI, which P is performance, I is image, and E is exposure. And I thought that it's all about how good of a job you do. But when you get in, but my manager told us it's like 60-40. It's more about how you are known in your organization, how you are known in your organization. So I think that was kind of an eye-opening thing for me, because I was raised, it's all about work ethic, doing a good job. But really, I mean, that's part of it, but it's the more important thing is how you are connected in your organization, how many people you know, so you can get out of your silos.
Okay. Thank you. And there's another question in the chat box. It says, are there any tips you have for how others can support you at work?
Yeah, I would definitely talk to your manager. I guess a few managers ago, I've had quite a bit of managers, and when I had my self-review, I saw all these things in my self-review that were kind of surprising, and I kind of made a conscious effort that I'm going to meet with my manager on a one-to-one basis every month, so I know where I am, doing on track as far as goals, job performance, that kind of thing. I would just definitely reach out to your manager, and maybe they could work out some kind of accommodations. But I think it's very important to make sure you have that one-to-one connection with your supervisor or your manager.
And I do have another question. Have you learned about any resources that, let's say, high school graduates could use, like to support them in the transition or anything in that manner?
That's a great question. I'm sure you could probably do some Google search. I mean, I can only speak from my experience, because my challenges have always been around the social aspects. But I don't know if, like, because colleges would have some kind of orientation if you're going to go into college, but I know like Berry College had like SOAR, which is like their college orientation. I think that's an important thing. And just, I would just maybe look for like what kind of resources there are for people who are transitioning from high school to college. I mean, it's a big, I mean, to me, the bigger step was, getting my, once I graduated from college is getting that first job was the hardest part, getting that first job out of college. I mean, I was working 2 part-time jobs and then looking for a job. But I think I got a lot of responsibility, especially with like paying bills and stuff like that at an early age from working at age 14. Because I had to pay for, my cars, maintenance, gas, insurance, all of that. So I hope that answers your question, or the question.
Somebody said, what is a SILOH? SILOH?
Yeah, what is a silo? Because I keep hearing about silos in the autism community.
A silo would be like like in an organization, you have like the IT department, or you have like the marketing. Basically, the silo would be your like department in your organization. And I think when you get into the workforce, I think it's important for the different silos to work together, because I think the different silos could take something like, basically a silo is like a department. So I think it's important for collaboration with the different departments. So they could take an idea that, another department had, and you could apply it to the one you have. It's almost kind of like getting input from various amounts of people, because it's only going to make your department that much stronger if you can get different input from different parts of that organization, like being collaborative as an organization.
Can you talk a little bit more about your job? Because your job is just not something that you would expect an autistic person to have. So talk about like what made you get the job and what challenges you face and all of that.
Yeah, I'm an electronic graphics operator. So basically, in layman's terms, I recall full screen graphics in like the lower third, they call them fonts for live and tape shows for CNN, CNN International, HLN, and CNN in Espanol. And I think getting my job in Macon as a videographer, I mean, I was pretty much what they call a one-man band. So you would have to go out and interview people. I think, I guess the fear of losing your job, I guess when I was talking about fear earlier in my presentation, is that I had a fear of losing my job. So I just basically challenged myself to, I mean, I was an early getting outside your comfort zone example, but I think one thing about my job is it's all about change. I mean, like I'm a floater, so every work week is different than the next. So I don't have a set schedule. So that's definitely a challenge for someone on the autism spectrum. But I think you just have to learn to become flexible and adaptable and agile, because that's how you're going to see a lot of companies working, especially now in the COVID-19 pandemic. We're having to do a lot of things virtual, like this conference. We've had to do it virtually. We've had to change the format. So I think it's important to embrace change, because change is going to happen, and it's a change is a part of life. I know it sounds, I'm making it, change is hard, but it's a part of life. And I think it's important to have change early in your life so you can have the experience, or get that experience, right now.
How do you deal with the anxiety of being a floater with your schedule changes?
Well, I just I know I'll have, when I initially find out about a change in my schedule, I'll have the initial kind of emotional stuff. So I just kind of just, you know, take a deep breath and just like, that's just part of my job, and you just have to just deal with it. I mean, because that's just, you know, I think right now it's important to stay employed, and that fear of losing my job to me is what kind of motivates me to, you know, just embrace change and just whatever my managers need me to do, I will do it. Like I just found out what my schedule is for next week yesterday. So it's just, you got to just be able to embrace change. It's going to happen. Change is part of life. So, hey, Maya.
So this is Maya. You ever have those experiences where you plan to take time off and then you're called at the last minute to go into work anyway because somebody else took the day off?
Like if I have like assigned paid time off, that's locked in. So I'm not going to be called in if I have PTO, but there have been times where I've been asked to, you know, adjust my schedule, like make an off day, because I mean, there'll be days where like, you know, someone's got to take bereavement leave, or someone has an emergency and you're the only option to cover that. You know, sometimes you just have to just change. If I don't have anything planned, I mean, it's okay to say no. Like if I don't have anything planned, then I'll probably do it. But if I did have something planned, I would let my managers know that, hey, I'm sorry, I've got something planned this day, so I can't help out that day. But if I don't have anything planned, I definitely will be a team player and help out.
Yeah, because I've heard stories of people, like my mom would have this happen. Like she worked for a grocery store, and there were times where she would promise that she would have a couple of days off, and then at the last minute she'd get called into work. But that was because she was a new employee and she'd been there not even a year yet. So yeah. I'm curious if that had happened to you.
Yeah, that's happened before. And I mean, and then I would, you know, have a conversation with my manager, and then sometimes he or she would like work something out, like we'll give you these 2 days as your off day to kind of compensate for what happened, you know, what we had to do. Like I know I've had to adjust, I think it was like last year I had to adjust I had like a PTO day and someone got a last minute approval. So I had to, you know, change some days off. I mean, it just, one thing I guess in my industry is it's all about change. I mean, I think for being an autistic person in TV, it's definitely hard, but I think I've been doing it for so long, I'm just used to the change. And I mean, every day is different. But I think it's life is all about change. I mean, I know I keep saying that, but it's true. So I think and my father passed away when I was 10 years old. So I got an early dose of what change is all about. So.
Okay, and someone asked, have you ever been in a leadership or mentorship role in a group or at work? What was that like? Is it easy or something you enjoy?
Well, part of my role as a electronic graphics operator staff with advanced talent is that we are in a leadership role, and we basically are like the point persons for like new show launches. I have been like on a circle mentoring group. We haven't had that in a couple of years, but I wish that Turner would. I know I would love to be a part of you know, being a mentor for you know, for people on the spectrum or for neurotypicals, and that's kind of like why I started the Atlanta chapter of GCA Metro Atlanta, because there's not a lot of resources for adults on the spectrum in Atlanta. Everything seems to be geared towards children. So, and I think that's, you know, why when I met Scott Kramer, we kind of had similar stories. Is that, you know, when he was in Chattanooga, there weren't many resources for adults on the spectrum, and I kind of saw the same thing. So I just want to be and that's, I guess I want to be a role model and like be, I guess, a person to inspire people that you can look at the things you can do. I think people on the spectrum need to see like the things that they can do and not be focused on the things that they can't do. Look at the glass half full and not glass half empty.
Okay, and what's some advice you would give for building social skills for someone who has autism spectrum?
That's a great question. I think looking at the book, How to Read a Person Like a Book, is one thing that my therapist told me to do. I just think that's something that I've been trying to look at for myself. Like, how can adults on the spectrum improve their social skills? I'm trying to do that myself. So I think just basically getting out of your comfort zone and challenging yourself to get involved into social things. Like, I never thought that I would be starting a support group. And I mean, I would never have thought that I'd be doing that, 3 years ago. But I think challenging yourself to do things in a social atmosphere is probably a good step. And then maybe there's probably publications for social skills. I just wish that there would be some more resources for adults, because I'm trying to work on that myself, because that's where I'm still struggling with social skills.
Well, one thing I don't like about adults programs, and I've talked about this in my podcast, is that they seem to focus more towards young adults. And it's like, after 25, you're cut off. Like, I've noticed this at the Emory Autism Center. Like, they start programs for a little while, and then they rip it away again. And it's frustrating.
Yeah, because I mean, what people need to understand is that you're going to be autistic for the rest of your life. It doesn't stop, in your 20s. I mean, I'm 46 and I'm still going through it. So, and I wish there would be more, it just seems like programs for adults on the spectrum, it's almost gets ignored, or there's not a lot of focus on that, because being autistic it doesn't stop in your 20s. It's going to be going on for your entire life. So it just kind of like Ava's law stops at 21. I mean, the thing that breaks my heart is once people turn 22, they're not going to be able to be covered by Ava's law. I mean, that's what breaks my heart, is how are these people what are they going to do after, they're aged out?
Yeah. That's
what we need to have these programs for.
Yeah. And people need a place where they can go. And even if they run social skills groups, like at the Emory Autism Center, like I've noticed that they have I noticed they've gotten better about having older adults in their groups. Is it the My Life program? And I'd like to see more autism centers do things like that.
I know the Chattanooga Autism Center's got programs for adults down here, like they got the stages and they've got GCA programs, I don't know what's up in Atlanta,
Yeah, that's the problem, is there's not a whole lot in Atlanta. And I think, and I guess one thing I'm curious about is like how many people like me were misdiagnosed for years, thinking that they're OCD when they were on the spectrum all along. Because I would probably be characterized as one of those people that were diagnosed at a later stage of their life. I mean, I know that's where I think Scott and I had the same kind of stories, that he was in his in his 40s, right, Nathan?
Yeah, he was in his 40s.
Yeah. So I think there's got to be a lot of people who are kind of like me that were misdiagnosed, because I remember going to my mom, and autism was never brought up with her, with my pediatrician. It wasn't even suggested. I went to like special education schools, elementary school, and but autism was never brought up until she saw that Today Show special on Asperger's, which is now ASD, and that was kind of like, this is Jamie. This is more typical. This is what Jamie is. His symptoms are like, so.
And really, the autism diagnosis didn't really get started. They didn't start identifying autism till like 95, before they started identifying it in children, like the higher functioning autism. I hate using that term,
Well, and I remember when I saw Temple Grandin's movie and her story, and she got diagnosed in the 60s. And then I went back to my mom and said, "Are you sure autism was not even brought up?" And she said no. And I guess it was just because it was only, I think my mom did the best she could with the information she had at the time. So, I mean.
Okay, and there are more questions. Okay, the first one is, what sort of programs would adults be interested in? Are there things like talk therapy helpful?
I know, like, we have like Toastmasters at Turner. I think that would be that's another good way to get. I don't know if there's there's got to be other like Toastmasters chapters in Atlanta to help get some people experience with social skills and public speaking. But yeah, I definitely would highly recommend those kinds of resources.
And a participant commented saying, I have a 14-year-old who is starting college in the fall, taking online classes. I like the discussions of support groups, but I'm not sure how to plug him in. Just received his diagnosis 1 year ago and have a great therapist.
Would Spectrum, no, that's for older people. I guess maybe the Emory Autism Center, or Mark, that might be more of that age group, because I mean, 14, we're talking, in the teens. So, but I think it's the earliest you can get the diagnosis, the better, because then you can get access to all those resources. But yeah, I would just maybe start working at a young age. I mean, that definitely worked for me, because I learned a lot about responsibility and the value of money and paying bills and all that stuff. So maybe, I know it sounds kind of early to start working, but I can just speak from my experience.
So this is Maya. How old were you when you learned how to start paying bills? Things like that.
Probably 14, because I had to pay my auto insurance, or actually it's 17, probably 17, because then is when I got my car, and then I had to start paying for my auto insurance. I got a checking account. I think I got a checking account at 14 when I started working. And then I guess my first bill that I had to pay was my auto insurance. I had to pay my auto insurance every month. And that's where a good bit of my money went to when I was working, was my auto insurance. So I would say 17, when I started working, having auto insurance was probably my first bill I had to pay.
And do you have any job recommendations for adults with autism spectrum?
I think people on the spectrum would do really well with jobs that are related to like set task-oriented jobs. And I think like filing stuff. And I think it's giving them like a set number of tasks to do. And not really necessarily giving them a deadline, but maybe do something with a deadline down the road. But I think specific task-oriented jobs. I know, like car washes. I've seen. I think there's what Ventures at Atlanta. I think they hire people on the spectrum. I know Walgreens has a program for people on the spectrum. I think Home Depot has a program. I think you're seeing PCW, PwC has a program for people on the spectrum. Microsoft. I think people or organizations are going to see what role people on the spectrum have for their organization, because they can aid their organization. I think stuff that's highly jobs that are good with detail oriented. I think, because that's part of what my job is, making sure that text, there's no grammar issues or text errors or grammar errors or misspellings on the air catching them before they hit air. So I think those kind of detail-oriented jobs would be ones for and task-oriented for people on the spectrum.
Since you said that you started working at an early age, do you have any advice for financial management, anything like that?
Yeah, I definitely think it's important, to have, definitely save money. And I did make some. I got into big time credit card debt. You're definitely going to learn some financial lessons. I think definitely, save as much money as you can for down the road. Don't overextend yourself. Live within your means. Don't get a lot of credit card debt. Make sure you pay your bills on time. Build your credit score. Yeah, definitely get that knowledge and get that experience early. Definitely save as much money as you can.
And do you think you will stay as an electronic graphic organizer for like long term, or do you plan on switching careers? Or
I'm planning to stay in my role as long as I can. I think one thing with being in my role as electronic graphics operator, staffed with advanced talent, or SWAT, is you get your feet wet into managerial or supervisor roles like sit calls. I remember having to do sit calls many years ago, and my week was during Thanksgiving week, and we were about ready to sit down at my mom's house, getting ready for Thanksgiving dinner, and I got a call. Someone was calling out. So I think getting my feet wet early into managerial duties, I don't want to go into management. But I do plan to. I'd love to stay with Warner Media or CNN. I think I like we get to do I've done a lot of traveling on election years to DC. So in conventions, I do like the perks with my job. I think right now I'm just trying to make sure I keep my job, because I'm just very blessed to have my job, because there's a lot of people who have lost their job due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So I just kind of, pinch myself every day that I have a job and I'm working at CNN, because I never would have imagined that would happen. So I'm just very blessed to be employed and working for a great organization like Warner Media.
And someone asked, how did you learn how to drive?
My mom taught me to drive. I didn't get my driver's license till I was 17. I was kind of afraid to do it. I remember my mom picked me up at the bus stop and said, we're going to go get your learner. We're going to go get your driver's license. Cause I mean, she needed my help to help with my brother and my younger sister with errands. So my mom took me, taught me to drive, and also working at I worked at a golf course. My bosses at the golf course would take me out into the driving range and show me how to drive a golf cart. So really, I got my foundation from driving a golf cart and just kind of applied that knowledge to driving a car. So basically, it was working at the golf course, and then my mom taught me how to drive.
Somebody else asked, what about driving a bicycle?
I think my dad taught me how to do it. I mean, I drove a bike at a young age. I didn't have any problem with that. In fact, I still have a bike right now. I don't ride it as much, but I believe it was my mom or my dad taught me how to ride my bike. So I did that at an early age too.
Okay. And someone said, what extent do sensory issues dissipate with adult? And if not, how much control do you have over your workspace to keep it comfortable?
I still have sensory issues, like definitely like loud noises. If there's like overlapping dialogue in social, keeping up with, to me, that's sensory overload, trying to keep up with all these different, conversations going on. I don't have like a dedicated workspace. I mean, I just basically just make sure I keep my workspace, clean and sanitized, and cause I don't have like a cubicle. I work in the control room. So it changes from each day. I could be working, we have like 6 control rooms, or 8 A, B, C. Yeah, we have like 6 control rooms. So it could be a different control room one day and a different one the other day. Right now, I just make sure I keep my work area kind of organized and, sanitized and clean.
And what made you start your own support group?
Well, I think it was because I was just kind of frustrated with the lack of resources in Atlanta for autistic adults, and I, meeting Scott Kramer and meeting, Nathan Zimmerman and Dave Buck, that just basically they inspired me to start a Metro Atlanta GCA support group. I mean, I think I just want to make a difference. I want to help people on the autism spectrum. I think I think that's my calling right now, is to help people on the spectrum. So I just, hopefully I just like to inspire, maybe be a mentor for, young adults and adults on the spectrum to do things that they wouldn't think they could do, and I guess I'm kind of proof that you can do it.
Actually, I have a question too, because a lot of people are talking about trying to get their autistic children to college in some capacity. Did you commute or stay at college? And if you stayed there, like, did you run into any difficulties with roommates or in your living situation? Can you talk about that?
That's a great question. I lived on campus for all my 4 years at Berry. My mom was going through a divorce with her second husband at the time, and I felt like I needed to be somewhat kind of closer to home. I did look at other schools. I looked at a Church of Christ school in Searcy, Arkansas was like my backup choice, but I felt like I needed to be closer to home. It's kind of funny. I got along pretty well with my roommates. The problem is my roommates got into trouble. But as far as, I got along fine with all of my roommates, especially my roommate my senior year. I got along really well with him, and he kind of got me to kind of get outside my shell and have somewhat more of a social stuff. social life. I did some more social stuff, not a whole lot during my senior year, but I got along pretty well with all of my roommates. It's just one of them got kicked off campus, and but I got along okay with all my roommates in college. I just didn't hang out with a bunch of. I didn't hang out with them. I didn't like hang out with them a whole lot. But we did get along okay. I was just working all the time and studying.
Sounds good. That's definitely good information because I know that is a concern for many people on the spectrum and not on the spectrum too.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess I must have just lucked out because I got along real well with all my roommates in college. But I think it was important for me to live on in the dormitory, and because that's part of the whole, that's part of the steps into living independently. That's kind of like where you get your little foundations from.
So this is Maya. Do you have any tips for parents that want to hold their kids back and prevent them from living on their own?
That's a great question. I think it's kind of like a fine line. You don't want to enable your kid, but you also need to challenge them to get outside their comfort zone. I think I can only express the importance of having parents getting them outside their comfort zone. And I know parents want to protect their children from the outside world and stuff, but I think you're almost kind of doing them a disservice by not letting them experience things outside, walk outside the door and experience new things. So I think I would just kind of treat that, with baby steps, maybe one step at a time. But I think it's important to, for parents who have kids on the autism spectrum, or even adults, to challenge them to get outside their comfort zone, challenge them. I know it's hard, but you got to do it. I think because they're going to experience so many different things that they would never even think about experiencing. So I would highly recommend that for parents who have autistic boys and girls or young adults.
Okay, we have about 5 minutes left.
Okay.
Anyone else want to ask any questions? But a question that I have for you is, where do you see yourself 5 years from now?
I hope I've sold my condominium and I'm still employed with Warner Media. Hopefully I've had some, more serious. I've had some, dated some more girls. Had some more that just traveled to some places that are on my list. I love traveling. I think just, building GCA, hopefully GCA is growing and helping people. I guess my thing is make sure I want to help as many people as I can or inspire people to be, to do great things.
There's another question. Let's see, where is it? Does someone need to be a college graduate to be a part of your mentoring support group? Is there an age threshold?
Nathan, I don't think so, right? I don't think there should be I don't think there's an education requirement for, I think it's more about having experience. I don't think there should be an education requirement for that. Because I don't think it should be something that should be discriminated. I don't think education should matter. Anybody else?
I don't see any more questions, but thank you for all your responses and thank you for all the information that you've given us. I'm sure everyone appreciated it. And I was able to get a lot of great resources from your presentation. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Um,
Yes, thank you.
This was really good. Thank you, Jamie.
Sure, absolutely.
I'd like to talk to you later about something else I'm working on.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a podcast. I'd like to interview you about ways that individuals on the spectrum can become more independent, because I have a similar presentation that I do. So I wouldn't mind doing an interview with you sometime.
Okay.
Thank you much.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, everybody. Hope you have a good day.
Thank you. Hope you have a good day too.
Decided she wanted to get some work done, but I did offer to record her and then just kind of ask her questions, but she wanted to get some work done, so I'd like to do